Tristan is the only knight of the Round Table that Artoria absolutely couldn't stand during meetings. Why? Because he always kept his eyes closed, so Artoria could never tell if he was actually listening or straight up asleep. What makes it even funnier is that there was one time when Artoria and the Knights of the Round Table paraded on horseback after an expedition. All the knights looked cool, noble, and majestic, the perfect image of chivalry. But what no one knew was that Tristan was actually sound asleep on his horse the entire time. Yep, man was literally napping mid-parade. And that's what we're talking about today. The Knights of the Round Table are often seen as the cool kids in the class. Yeah, they're iconic, cool, and their chivalry inspires tons of people. But let's be real, they also have some wild moments that are so ridiculous, it's hard to believe these guys are the same legendary knights we always hear about. So here it is, some of the funniest moments from the Knights of the Round Table. This video is actually an update from one I made a while back. Last time, I only covered a few moments from some of the knights, but this time, I'm putting in a lot more, including the ones from the original video. So don't worry, you don't need to dig up the old one. I'm remaking everything here, better quality and all. Let's get into it. Still speaking of Tristan getting the short end of the stick, this guy's got some seriously unlucky comedic moments. For example, he's been blasted into a wall by Artoria Alter for just walking by, spent his time in Luluhawa borrowing money from Bedivere and getting into trouble for trying to con women, and even had his big plan to impress Chaldea ruined by John Alter swooping in first. And let's not forget that he got physically beaten up by the other knights as punishment for his actions in his interlude. Even in the summer camp singularity, he's the only Round Table knight who dies without even putting up a fight. Also, his well-known situation about him being sad turns into a meme, and that becomes even funnier because it actually exists. Yes, someone actually plays Despacito using a harp. The next hilarious moment with the Knights of the Round Table comes from this one knight. The White Knight of the Round Table, Gawain, the Knight of the Sun. This guy is built like a tank, has the charm to match, and honestly, he's surprisingly humble for a knight. In the Camelot movie, he looks menacing because orders from the king make him act all tough and terrifying. But deep down, he's a nice guy, especially when he's hanging out with his fellow Knights of the Round Table. He's all about chivalry, especially when it comes to the ladies. Super respectful and polite. But that doesn't stop him from sneaking a glance at, certain assets now and then. And the best part is that he's totally unbothered when people call him out for it. Honestly, I think Gawain just sees it as part of his charm. If you've ever wondered why Artoria ends up wearing that very revealing bunny suit in Summer 4, well, you can thank Gawain and Lancelot for that. Yep, these two convinced their own king, who by the way, is also Gawain's aunt, to wear a bunny girl outfit for a summer event. Another funny thing about this guy is the fact that Gawain can cook. Kind of. His specialty is mashed potatoes, and that's literally all he can make. It's funny enough on its own, but what makes it even better is the historical inaccuracy. Potatoes weren't even a thing in Europe during his time since they came from America. So if we let that little inaccuracy go, just imagine the absolute confusion when Gawain, with full confidence, starts whipping up this unrecognizable, lumpy mess of mashed potatoes. People who didn't even know what mashed potatoes were just stared at his creation, wondering what on earth they were looking at. And yeah, Gawain knows his cooking is a disaster. He even uses it as a punishment for Mordred during his interlude. Alright, so we've talked about Tristan and Gawain. Now it's time for Lancelot, our beloved chivalrous knight who also has a bit of a flirty side. Yeah, he's fallen from grace, but that doesn't make him any less of a knight among knights at Artoria's court. Now, we all know Lancelot has this slightly questionable vibe sometimes. Like, remember that moment when he literally saved Da Vinci from her own suicide attack, not because of strategy or anything, but because he saw her as a beautiful lady and his body just went full hero mode. It's kind of wild, but honestly it tells you a lot about who he is deep down. But the funniest part about Lancelot is his banter with Mash. These moments are honestly the best. Sweet, awkward and hilarious. Since Mash has Galahad's soul merged with hers, Lancelot starts seeing her as his daughter, and Mash slowly begins thinking of him as a dad while still kinda hateful because of Galahad's influence. It's so weird but so funny at the same time. There's that one time during the Servant Summer Festival where Lancelot buys some doujinshi from Mash's circle. He tries to go incognito by simply tanning his skin and wearing glasses. And of course, Mash doesn't recognize him at all. Yeah, that's not too surprising. But here's the funny thing. Fujimaru, Ushi, and everyone else can clearly tell it's Lancelot right from the start. So, from an outsider's perspective, this guy's basically Clark Kenting his own daughter, and in his mind it works flawlessly. But from an insider's perspective, it's just Mash being so dense that she doesn't recognize her father at all, just because he's wearing glasses and has a tan. In the second Halloween event, Lancelot pretends to be his berserker self, just so he doesn't have to show his face to Mash. Honestly, probably a smart move, since just seeing him, face or not, seems to annoy Mash anyway. But because he's still technically a saber, just acting like a berserker, his dialogue ends up being this wild mix of normal speech and chaotic yelling. So instead of the usual berserker Lancelot grunts or him screaming "Arthur" in that raspy voice, Saber Lancelot drops these short, meme-worthy lines like "loser" and "shut up." Just imagine him saying all those words with his raspy, angry voice while yelling, but the words are just casual. Oh, and as if that wasn't enough, there's Cleopatra casually roasting him by calling him Sir Lance's a lot of married women. That is such a perfect cherry on top. But honestly, all of that still feels kinda mild compared to his antics in Grand Carnival. So Lancelot realized that Mash is still hard to approach. So as a worrywart dad, he literally wears a dangerous beast outfit just to get closer to Mash. Yeah, we can kinda blame Moriarty for that one, but still, seeing him go that far just to bond with his daughter is weirdly sweet in its own way. The next hilarious moment is with Percival, the pure-hearted, compassionate, and honestly, kind of clueless knight of the Round Table. Percival is so innocent that any scene with him feels like a breath of fresh air. Like, no awkward flirting or weird stuff, just pure-hearted goodness. There was a moment when ruler Artoria greeted him, and this dude literally started crying because he was so happy to see his king in a bunny girl outfit. Honestly, I can't tell if he's thrilled about the outfit itself, or just proud that Artoria has grown enough to rock it confidently. Either way, it's adorable. Now, Percival is apparently a big-time cook, and he's always piling mountains of food onto his friends' plates. When he sees Artoria again, he's worried she's slimmed down since the last time they met. So what does he do? He swears to load her plate with meat and veggies. He even does the same for Gareth, but he's completely clueless about why she's running away from him. So it's pretty much implied that Percival was the one doing all the cooking for the Round Table back in the day, which honestly explains why Artoria's appetite is so legendary now. But after Percival's death, Gawain had to take over the kitchen duties. And with all of his mashed potatoes, well, I guess that also can explain why Artoria's appetite is so legendary now. From the biggest knight to the smallest one, let's talk about Gareth the Beautiful Hand. Gareth actually had an early cameo in the game. Kinda like how Artoria Lancer got her own sneak peek with her altar version. The difference is, Gareth's cameo wasn't some dramatic reveal. Nope, she was just casually shopping at the summer festival. And that's where things get funny. Turns out Gareth has a thing for spicy doujinshi, specifically BL or boys love or, well, gay fan manga. She stumbles upon a very bold doujinshi featuring Sir Kay and King Pellinor. At first, she's totally shocked. In her own words, she really said repugnant, but instead of walking away, she just grabs it like it's no big deal. What makes it even funnier is that Gareth was ready to drop a crazy amount of money for the book, thinking it was some rare, expensive piece, until Mash told her it was actually pretty cheap. From the text, this kinda implies that Gareth's got quite the collection of Knight of the Round Table doujinshi already. Who's making these? What's in them? Honestly, let's not think too hard about it. After Gareth, we gotta talk about Mordred. One of her biggest highlights is just how rough and foul-mouthed she is in almost every mission. Whether it's enemies or allies, she always does something borderline mean or, at the very least, straight up rude. Honestly, I don't really remember too many funny moments between Mordred and the other Knights of the Round Table, besides that bit with Gawain I mentioned earlier. But if you guys have any, feel free to drop them in the comments. Still, her rough attitude somehow turns into comedy gold in a lot of moments. In the London Singularity, Mordred becomes our ally, and her day-to-day antics are just hilarious. One of the funniest bits is her so-called detective method to figure out who's behind the demonic fog. It's interesting to say the least. Her idea of solving a mystery is simple. Find someone suspicious, punch or threaten them until they squeak or get scared. If they're innocent, move on and find another suspect. Rinse and repeat. Absolute barbaric nonsense, but you can't help but laugh. Another funny moment in London is how she keeps calling Dr. Roman Marin. It's a tiny slip-up that seems harmless at first, but considering how rude and sharp-tongued Mordred is, you start to wonder if she's actually just calling him moron on purpose, without making it too obvious. Her chaotic behavior doesn't stop at serious missions either. Even in events that are supposed to be sweet, like Valentine's, Mordred just can't help herself. She gives you a store-bought chocolate bar that's already half-eaten. She straight up didn't plan on giving you anything at first. The description literally tells you to go buy your own damn chocolates next year. And maybe, she'll get you something proper if she remembers. The thing is, in FGO, servants' Valentine's CEs are the same every year. So, yeah. Mordred keeps giving you that same half-eaten chocolate bar every single year. At this point, she's not forgetting. She just doesn't care. And her rude streak doesn't stop there. It even carries over to her rider version. There's this moment where she straight up smacks Kiyohime with her surfboard, just because Kiyohime was cheering about love a little too loudly. I mean, yeah, Mordred uses her surfboard as a weapon all the time in battles, but the fact that she casually uses it to bonk her friend for being too noisy is just next level Mordred energy. And of course, no talk about the Knights of the Round Table is complete without bringing up Merlin. This guy is the ultimate wild card, and honestly, he's got more WTF moments than we can count. But for me, the most ridiculous one has to be when Merlin decided to give Artoria a dick. Yeah, you heard that right. There was a reason for it, an important one actually. But knowing Merlin, he probably also did it just for laughs. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole point of this was so Artoria could have an heir with Guinevere, but she didn't go through with it. And somehow, Morgan found out that Artoria temporarily had a dick, managed to, extract some of her essence. And boom, Mordred was born. A direct clone made from Artoria's sperm. And we all know how that turned out. Under Morgan's influence, Mordred grew up absolutely hating Artoria's guts, which eventually led to the showdown at the Battle of Camlan. So yeah, Merlin's ridiculous decision basically set the stage for one of the most epic and tragic battles in Arthurian legend. Well actually, you could blame a lot of people for this mess really. But the fact that Merlin gave Artoria a dick in the first place is just too funny to ignore. No matter how justified the reason was, the thought of Artoria having won even for a short time is still hilarious. And then Morgan somehow managed to steal her sperm. You can imagine that scenario however you want, but good lord, what a lore. Talking about Morgan, the Morgan from Lost Belt 6 also has a pretty hilarious moment that shows she's not all doom and gloom. No matter how ruthless and powerful she is as the terrifying ruler of Fairy Britain, there's still a more human side to her. Like, the fact that she absolutely cannot handle caterpillars. So there's this thing called the Caterpillar Wars that happened 200 years before the modern day in the British Lost Belt. Basically, a swarm of these caterpillar Moors started attacking the country, including Camelot. And you'd think Morgan, this unstoppable force recognized as a legit threat to even the foreign god, would just obliterate them on the spot. But no, instead she starts screaming like crazy, fires off roadless Camelot once, gets the hell out of there, and locks herself inside Camelot until Barghest comes along and wipes out all the caterpillars for her. What makes it even funnier is that Morgan was so genuinely relieved once the caterpillars were gone that she immediately made Barghest a fairy knight right after that event. Honestly, that's such a relatable moment for someone who's supposed to be this all-powerful ruler. Everyone has their breaking point, and for Morgan it's caterpillars. There are still some moments with the fairy knights that I want to talk about, but that's for another video with Morgan's Britain Squad. For now, click subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.